All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, The Bedluck Gamer, with my co-host, Glue Boy.
Hello.
And today, another ragey title. And it's always because a lot of these concepts are... I think one of the big things about tabletop that's very prominent in the scene is just the idea that other people are doing it wrong or will do it wrong if you give them a choice. So, you know, that's why a lot of these kind of themes are this way. Also, yeah, I know my scene is dark. I don't know. I'm so done with Logitech stuff at this point. I can't seem to get any program that can affect the lighting and exposure for my camera to work. The one I did last time, now every time I click camera adjustments, there's no options to adjust, and even though it worked last time, so I don't know.
You found a way around it, and then some dev was like, fuck, they adjusted their camera, we don't want that.
Yeah, I don't know. But while we're waiting for everyone to hop in the chat, we'll do a little bit of small talk. So Alex, what's been up?
I've been back to making videos. I took a bit of a break. I definitely just got too hung up with work and I needed some time. I got that I'm all chewing at, and then I'm finally like actually doing the soft research process at this point. But because I'm gonna be gone in like April for almost 2 weeks offline, I've decided I'm going to try to put out a video on Werewolf the Apocalypse, like right before I leave. Something to carry over the views, and my overview videos are just those infinite view generators. So, and people keep asking about Werewolf, and it's a cool setting. It's just some parts of it are a bit of a minefield to talk about online, because the 5th edition jump did some things better or worse, and then there's some elements of Werewolf where it's like didn't age the greatest. And then if you bring it up at all, that like, oh yeah, and then there's this thing, it didn't age the greatest, and I don't know, the one that is the big one is, not to get too political here, but there's a older werewolf tribe that name changed, and there's like a different change. The nickname for the tribe is the Little Brothers, but the actual name for it is a word of a creature that a lot of people, Native Americans, do not want you to say. And I have a personal value of, I don't like terms, be it like specific swears or slurs or anything that make a person uncomfortable. That is a value I hold, and I'm not gonna negate on that for a YouTube video. But I know the most annoying people are not gonna be like, they're just gonna be like, ugh, woke, censoring, how dare you? Because that's what happens whenever I talk about these things on my channel.
Yeah, well, Werewolf is also just one of the harder ones. Well, Vampire has it a little bit too, but Werewolf, like, the themes that were built around Werewolf were specifically, like, extra political.
Yeah, like, Werewolf inherently is a game about eco-terrorism, and a lot of it, too, is activism through ways of, like, rage and violence is not a way to actually inflict change. Like, a large point of it is, these are things we should be talking and caring about, but there are ways of going about it that are bad and harmful and do nothing. And as well, on like that other side, Werewolf is also a game that has just a lot of, just because the World Darkness does this, it plays on a lot of different cultures and themes, and it tries to blend the entire world into it. And sometimes you do it good, sometimes you don't. I think for the most part, White Wolf tries to do it in good faith. Do they always hit? No, but like I don't expect anyone to. And it'd be like, I don't think calling White Wolf or some companies like, oh, they're all just racist for doing this is helpful or productive. But like, there's also some elements where there was some drama, quote unquote, where there's a cultural sensitivity expert they hired to help with like Native American stuff they were writing, and then ignored a lot of the stuff they hired him for. Because he said, hey, we should probably change this term. Like, this comes from this. This is actually like a really offensive term. Like, and then the person's like, no. And this person wrote up a big old post about like some of the stuff that went on behind the scenes for the 5th edition jump. but overall was like, it's fine. Like, there's a lot of elements that were carried that are good, but like I had a bad experience. It's just like, I'm not the channel to talk about that. I will bring up things when it's pertinent, because I think it's good to like have things even if it's not great history. I think the history should be out there and open. And at the end of the day, I also can't police what you do at your table. So like, I can say I don't like this name for this tribe and I wouldn't use it in my tables. But if someone else is like, but I'm gonna keep saying it, it's like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not your mom. I'm not gonna police your home game. I'm just explaining why I'm not gonna call them that in a video.
Yeah. And a lot
It's
of like
annoying.
political and cultural sensitivity is kind of like a one-way street. There's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to stuff like that, because there's a lot of people who talk reserved about one thing but completely unreserved about another, because there just hasn't been like a lot of political upheaval around it. I mean, the sheer number of people who represent Vikings with like horned helms and as brutish warriors and would go into berserk rage and eat mushrooms and everything like that really just makes Scandinavian people seem like brutish tribal people back in that day when they really weren't. But you don't hear about it because there's not a bunch of people going around bringing that up as a problem. Same with Irish people.
It's also, it's one of those bits where for the Viking ones in particular, it's really funny that like a period of, I think it was like 200 years, maybe even shorter, is now like the entire historical touchstone for a region.
Yeah.
Like the Viking age as we think of it is not that long, and like the actual real thing of the Viking age was like less of pillaging and conquering. It was also like expanding trade and like economy, because they became like a cultural and like economic powerhouse for a while. Like after that, they kind of stopped doing that. And like, sure, there's like elements of the berserker culture, like a cultural thing, because there's Irish is the same thing. It's like the Fianna. Then there's like another one around that same area. It's like, yeah, there's probably some historical precedent for a little bit of it. I remember reading about it a while ago, like the actual historical examples of like the berserker battle rage. But most of it is people writing about how scary it is that some dude is like rushing at them with an axe.
Yeah.
Like that's where most of it comes from. Is like they're just terrified.
So, you know, it's one of those things that like, and to be fair, right, that's not anyone who wants to or does not want to bring up these subjects, that's completely up to them, because it's something like, I'm just here to enjoy my favorite hobby. I don't need to be stressed out because a bunch of people are getting angry at me. Whether that anger is justified or not is valid. So, you know, it's understandable.
Yeah, it's understandable where I have that take of I can only talk about my own values and like what I believe and think of something, but it should in no way ever be pushed to I am telling another human being what to do, because I have no authority over your life. And I also just don't give a shit what someone does if they're not being like harmful, making real tangible harm to another human being. And there are elements where like there's the cultural appropriation sensibilities, like all that you put into a work, and a lot of times sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I think it is like fair to mention when something's bad, and then be like, anyways, I'm gonna like just point out this thing exists. The one that comes up so often is when I talk about the Ravnos stuff, because I still get comments about it. Like it's people who are like, oh, you're being performative right now, or like this, that, the other, like, oh, how dare a horror game have like bad elements of something, where my point is, I don't think it's very cool to have a supernatural group, be it the actual like World of Darkness sourcebook for this ethnic minority of the Romani, or the Ravnos, and the actual supernatural thing going on is, oh yeah, by the way, they're like magical criminals that recharge based on crime. Or oh yeah, the Ravnos vampires are cursed to specifically commit like horrible crimes. That's just part of it, and like that's straight up just the stereotype. I don't think that's chill. And they also don't think that's chill because White Wolf changed that without like being told to. They did it themselves. Um, and I just point that out. Like, this is a part of history. I don't think it's very cool, but they changed it, so it's fine. And it's that is the one bit that annoys me constantly. It's people putting words in my mouth for like just saying I don't think this is chill. I'm happy it's different. Like, thumbs up. If someone wants to play with that old thing, cool, whatever. But like, I'm certainly not going to engage with it.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's I always find it interesting as well because whenever you hear about like a negative stereotype or appropriation or whatever, it always feels like a very like it's a lot more people behind it than it really is. I guarantee for a lot of things, not quite to that level, but like a lot of other kinds of things, there's some kind of like stereotypes that a lot of people in those groups just actually don't care about.
I had one comment that was a person who was like, "Oh yeah, no, I am Roma," and I read that. I remember reading that book, like the bigger source book that I think is a bit more iffy, where he's saying like, I read it with my family, we had a good laugh about it, but like specifically at pointing out that like, oh wow, this is just being culturally insensitive without fully understanding like the culture I come from. And then was also like, you should do a deep dive on it. It's like, oh, listen, I'm not the guy to do that.
Right.
Like, I have literally zero connection and ties to to the Romani. I've never been around people where I'm like, I can speak at least slightly more on like, hey, I'm gonna respect these Native American aspects because I mean, I grew up in Washington. I've grown up around multiple like reservations. I have more of a touchstone, but still not enough to be like, I'm an authority on this.
Yeah.
So I'll never speak for a group and say, hey guys, check out this thing on you. You should be offended about it. I'll more normally just be like, my core value is I don't like engaging in things that are essentially their existence is just making someone uncomfortable because I don't like doing that. And I just like, I like being nice and respectful to everyone I meet until they prove otherwise. And so that's the value I engage in all things.
Yeah, that's fair. As for me, I don't know, I have nothing interesting's been happening lately. Finally got rid of our car that just like broke down.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't even our fault. It was some fault with the Hyundai. And the bullshit thing about the whole thing is we went through this whole thing. We made a deal. They were just going to write us a check for $2,000 because they didn't want to replace the engine because it was some like faults with the engines for those cars. And they didn't want to replace it, and they weren't gonna pay to replace it. So they either wanted us to sell them our car for a fair market value, which that car was not worth a lot, or $2,000. And I was like, $2,000 is good enough.
Yeah.
And then they charged us like $1,000 for the diagnostics on the vehicle to figure out what was wrong, and then tearing the engine apart and then putting it back together. And then they told us like, they're like, hey, we need to get a valve cover for your car. Is that okay if we order that and install that? And we're like, yeah, sure. Why not, And then that part, that like those parts plus installation was like $400. And it's just like, we weren't even going to drive the car. I thought you were going to slap like $60 on it and be like, we got a valve cover and be good. But they charge us $1,000 for the whole thing. So it's just like, well, good. Our car broke down and it wasn't our fault, and we don't have a vehicle now, and they only paid us $1,000 effectively. So, that's just what it is.
Very dumb.
But we sold it to a scrapper, and they paid us $300 and some odd for it. So, whatever. We got a new vehicle in the meantime, and it's a lot better and newer and not as damaged. So
that's good.
But it's just,
I'm gonna have to do something similar-ish at some point. Like, my hope is that once I can move up there, then I can be like, all right, I should get rid of my car and maybe get something slightly better. But and so I know it's gonna be a scrapper because this car, I don't know how long it's gonna last. I've been driving it for literally almost an entire decade at this point.
Yeah.
And I've had to replace some engine bits. And it was a 2006, so I think that car is just gonna be scrap metal because I bought it for like, I think we bought that car for like $3,000, $4,000. Like it was not a lot.
Yeah.
It was like a Craigslist thing. It's very good for a Craigslist car, but like for a car you're driving for a decade, at some point I need to get something that can survive longer.
I recommend Carvana. We got our Jeep on Carvana, and like we have a 6-year payment plan for like $350 a month, more or less.
It's not too bad.
But it's not too bad. It's a 2021 too, so it's
shit. Okay.
relatively new. So Carvana has a lot of cars on it that are pretty good. Like Suzanne looked up a Jeep and found almost like exactly the car we needed, and it was really cheap. Well, relatively cheap. So
I can trust it. Shaq is promoting it.
oh, that makes me worried. That makes me worried.
I just opened up the website and I see Shaq smiling at me.
Shaq is one of those people who doesn't give a damn and promotes literally anything. So I just
True.
that does not make me feel any more confident. If anything, that makes me feel less confident.
Yeah, if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if Carvana is just a very nice middleman, like type seller. The type where it's like, hey, if you put in like all this work, we're putting in this work for you, and like, could you get a better deal? Probably, but like, it's gonna take a lot of extra effort when this thing is just like, hey, we're being convenient. That's sometimes how things work. I say without using it once.
Yeah, it seems just like a general middleman company that like takes used vehicles and sells them to people, you know. Also,
the fact that it delivers it instead of having to do that, like, hey, let me drive 50 miles to go get a new car.
Yeah. I mean, them driving it, those kind of expensive. It was like $200 for them to drive up with the vehicle we had, so.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah.
It wasn't too bad, but anyway, let's talk about character concepts. So, character concepts are necessary. Let's start off with that. I'm not saying go into a game and just start freeballing it. Have no idea for your character. Just be like, I want some stats. I want to play this class. Here we go. Like, it's important to have a general identity for your character. But there's one pitfall that almost every single person does when making a character. And I've done this plenty of times too. What do you think that pitfall is, Alex?
I can see, because it's one that I've fallen into, where a lot of times issues can pop up if you make your character concept is like way too limited in scope of like what they actually are doing. So that's when you have those issues of like, fuck, what does my character do? Like, if they've achieved their thing, I guess they're done. Or like, it's so narrow that participating in the plot itself is a little weird.
That one can come up too a lot, but no. So the biggest problem that happens most of the time, depending on, you know, your group and your overall like level of experience, is people very rarely make level 1 characters as their character concept.
That is true.
Because here's the thing, right? And this is kind of like an inherent problem in TTRPGs that unfortunately is the game part getting in the way of the narrative. You see a really cool build. You want to do a really interesting thing. So you want to make a character who is about that build. You make a character based on that build. And you start off at level 1, and then you don't even get to actually play the character you really wanted to play until like level 10. That happens in Pathfinder all the time. It's like level 8, level 10 is like when you start actually getting to be playing your build that you wanted to do. And what happens during this point is one, your character concept doesn't make a lot of sense for your level 1 version, and two, you are inorganically playing your character because, right, like, it's like, okay, I know I want this to be a part of my build, so I'm gonna set it up. I'm gonna grow towards that through my narrative. But what happens is you play a character who is inorganically doing things that maybe the story or like the moment, the narrative doesn't really like call for, you know. They'll be like, oh, I'm going to, like, I'll take my Archivist build I really like. The Archivist build for Thaumaturge is very interesting. You get to use a book to deflect people like a shield, and it's your tome, and it's a really fun build. But you don't really get to make the most use of it until like 8 or 10 or even 12. So it's like, all right, tome item, and oh, I'm gonna make it where I'm being attacked and I throw my book in the way, but it doesn't do anything because it's not a shield yet, you know. And it's just like, ah, damn, I wish my book was a shield. And it's just like, why would you do that? Why would you think, throw my book in the way of the sword or arrow coming at me? If you really wanted a shield, go get a shield, you know?
Yeah.
And there's different parts of this as well. There's the build version of this, and then there's the pure character concept. I want to make a badass, narratively badass, right, character. So I formulate this idea of this character in my head and all the things I want them to be able to do. And then I get in the game, and then I don't interact with the story organically because I have a path that I want my character to achieve. I saw this all the time in Adventure League. Had one kid who is very, very much wanting to play like evil dark wizard archetype, essentially. And so just started playing as an evil dark wizard-esque character at level 1. And it's just like, that's your character doesn't make a lot of sense, and you're so weak at level 1, especially as a wizard type character, or warlock in his case, that like
even weaker.
It's just, what are you doing? What are you doing? What you're not growing organically. You're not letting the story come to you. And that's kind of the hard part about TTRPGs, is we kind of give ourselves to the story, but we want to have control over that. But like, what makes a good story, and what makes good tabletop is when your character organically grows in ways that you were not expecting. When you go through the story and you're just like, okay, here's my guy at level 1, here's what we're doing, and just go from there. Because then choices become meaningful. Then, like, even if it's not build, like, even if it's not for the build, even if it's not necessarily optimal, your character's choices become a lot more meaningful. They come from certain types of events. And it's just something that I've noticed a lot of people do, of character concepts just preventing players from organically interacting with the story, putting themselves in the shoes of their character and just trying to do a thing, you know. They always have this idea of like a path they want to go, and so they always are trying to be like, okay, I know I want to do this thing, so I'm going to make my character suddenly become interested in the arcane and look into magic, you know, without anything magical or arcane happening to them.
Yeah, like, it is a thing where I feel like everyone who's played tabletop, like, in that roleplay style, has been in that moment of, like, even accidentally, or then just a lot of people put themselves in that box without knowing it, of, my character is doing this thing, I have a character concept, and either to do the build I want, I have to go against it in a really weird way, or have those moments of, I feel like I've made a character that's so narrow, I can't imagine participating. But also, like, yeah, the idea of like, oh man, I'm playing this character, they're a badass from level 1. Like, no, you're not. because I think it's an important element to think about when you're playing a game, because it can work differently when it comes to how long you know it's going to be. Because having a very narrow, like, specific thing you're going for in like a 10 sessioner thing, I think you can get away with it. And I think there's a difference in making a character you're going to play for possibly a year and a half or so for a long game, versus like I'm playing this character for 10 like sessions. They don't need to have like all their backstory come up. They don't need to even be like the most crazy consistent character. It's for like 10 sessions. I'm playing a build or I'm playing this vibe. I mean, it's the difference between some of the characters I've played in our 10 session like test games versus Dr. Hawthorne in our anime game. I built him very specifically of he has like a set goal. His goal of I want to get the entity to stop doing this to me. And there's a lot of paths he can take because he views a lot of this as viable ways of achieving his goal. And so I've built him to be able to interact with the story and all the characters' story. Like that's one of the things you have to build. I mean, even the character I'd say that might be like the most restrictive threat. So I think it's a pitfall people make sometimes of your character concept. Oh, I'm playing a bad guy. Like I'm making a character who's not a great person. And then all they are is a hindrance to the party. Fucking
Yeah.
Sebastian, I would say. His character arc is not being like a weird, emotionally stunted, like manipulative asshole. Because like there's a lot of parts in the story where he's participating, but he's very open when he doesn't like something, he doesn't care about something. But there's a way you can make a character that is overall apathetic to like what's going on, participate, and like take ownership. Because there's a difference there. And largely it's that question of I think you should always ask yourself is why is my character still involved in the story, and why is the party putting up with this character being in the story? If you don't have good answers for both of those, I think you should really consider having one. Especially for the why is the party putting up with this, because a lot of asshole characters get in this mark of like you're playing a character that's being antagonistic towards your group. Why wouldn't they just ditch you at the next tavern? Just like leave without telling you because this guy sucks. He keeps like backstabbing people. He keeps like stealing from the party. Let's like fuck this guy. I mean, you had that exact method like planned out with Nikos, playing an evil wizard, and he's like, ah shit, I gotta at least make these people like me. Like that's important.
Yeah, yeah. And to be fair, like sometimes that's the character arc, right? Going from being insufferable to being more connected with the party. And I think that's kind of just like advanced play stuff.
It's not something I'd recommend most people do.
Yeah.
Because like in practice, if you're not like really in tune with like your friends and everyone knows what it's gonna be, and the big one I think is if you're gonna play that archetype 100%, I think you need to have you need to at least have it in your head that this character is the butt of the joke for a little bit, because that breaks tension. Like for example, one of the elements that was like it's super funny, I still think about it, is when Nikos got mind controlled.
Yeah.
And fucking Rogel knocked him out of it, and then I was like, well, I still have multi attack.
Yeah.
Like playing that out was so funny. It endeared people to Nikos more. Like it's those elements, because if you went, no, I'm a dark wizard, I'm playing this, I won't allow this shield, I think it would be like a lamer moment, and also like it's negligible. It's just like it's an unarmed melee attack in D&D, so it's just strength mod. But like it's a funny moment everyone kind of walks around in. Sebastian had those too, where he's just being weird, and the joke was that, oh, this guy's a fucking weirdo, because that's an element you can help diffuse. Sometimes you need to also take your character concept and allow them to like go against type. You make a badass, have a moment or two where they're like goofy, or have a moment or two where they're like they're the joke. It helps like endear people a lot more to this character type that is specifically made of, oh, the character arc is that they become likable. It's creating the meta, like the audience / the people playing the game like this character, even if the actual like player characters don't at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways like there can be a lot of nuance. Like
A lot of nuance.
sometimes if you want to do the story right, you have to make your character unlikable for a time, and then you can have a moment where that shifts and changes, and it's something that, like, and to be fair, a lot of this part of the conversation is mostly just about like how you play versus what you start with. And I gotta say as well, for Nika, since he was mentioned before, so Nikos, for those who are unaware, he was a red wizard of Thay who was sent to participate in the adventure book. What was it? It was like
Out of the Abyss.
Out of the Abyss. And my last character concept not working, so I wanted to change characters to something that worked better, and so I came in at like level 5 or 6, something like that. And I don't think I could have made a level 1 Wizard of Thay, because that doesn't make sense for Wizards of Thay in the setting, you know, like they go to school, or they're tutored and all this kind of stuff. And so it's a character concept that couldn't have existed at level 1, and it worked because he came in much later. And that's kind of, I think, a general problem with tabletop, and the idea of the long campaign kind of gets in the way, because there can be really fun games with the idea of it is you're starting off already level 5, level 10, you know, whatever, and you're going from there. And so you can already kind of have a lot of your character's strength verified by the story, and then you can play your character the way they should have been able to play from level 1, from the idea that you had. People just want to do the whole level experience, even though so many people are like, man, I hate the first few levels of a game. And it's like, then just don't play those levels. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Why most people play D&D and start at level 3.
Yeah, like, it's just, there are ideas, and I think it's powerful to keep it in mind that there are just ideas that do not work for like certain campaigns and certain things. I have a character in the back burner. Well, I have 2 that are like directly in the back burner, one of which is only really playable when we eventually do Plague Watch. Like, regardless of if we stream it, I think everyone else in the group is also feeling like we just did a home game of Plague Watch, that would roll.
Yeah.
But like, I have a character that I built a while ago, and it was built for a specifically high-level D&D game Vale was thinking of doing. And the whole concept of this character is playing on, it was very inspired by Lord of the Rings, very inspired by Aragorn, and like the movie Aragorn having just a lot of like a melancholy.
Yeah.
And I really like that vibe, and it's a vibe that I haven't played before. So I play a lot of like charismatic, quippy characters because that's just what I gravitate to. And I wanted to do my strength at playing a very melancholic, quiet, wise character. And so the vibe is this guy. Basically, it's what if the ring from Lord of the Rings like didn't get thrown into Mount Doom. It was given to somebody who was able to withstand it, and the Dark Lord who wanted this artifact died a long time ago. So like, it is an amulet that can turn into different weapons, but is explicitly a corrupting, like trying to get you to bring it to its Dark Lord, sentient item. And it was a way of like, oh, it can shift weapons, so he can go to like a sword and a bow and arrow, and he's a master at all of this. Because the curse is that you are unable to age. Like, you do not age as long as it feeds from the life force of people you kill. And so he's this guy who's like, I don't want anyone else to have this artifact. I'm going to wield it because I can withstand it. And he takes part in like minor military skirmishes, and like he joins the military of certain like countries, and he's lived like a long ass time. A very long time. And he's a character that's like, I have seen my family line die like in front of me, and I couldn't do anything about it. I can't forge connections because someone will die in like the next 100 years. So like, what's the point? And he's a very just kind of quiet, sad character, but he's like content because his story arc is essentially finished. His story arc is, I'm going to live until like I'm the last person standing, and then finally I can like let go of this curse. And like, there's a lot of those melancholy I've planned out, like the thoughts of the amulet uses the images of his memories to actually try to trick him. But it's kind of given up on this at this point, and he's like, the amulet, there's one benefit this curse item has given me, and like I have yet to forget the face of my wife because it keeps using her image. Things like that. And this is a character that can only be high level. He only works as a high level character. And so I'm keeping in the back burner. If we do a high level anima game, I think it'd be fun to bring him out as like a psychic that enhances his own like body. Because I love that psychic tree. It's really fun.
Yeah, physical increase, yeah.
Like, it's super sick. And like that'd be an avenue I could play him. But like, I'm not gonna, if I show up with this guy at like level 3, I think it completely breaks the concept. Because like, how has this man lived like forever, essentially? How has he lived for 1,000 years? Like, an anime I think would be fun if he was like at least around, or at least a generation or two separated from like Ra and like all his bullshit. Like real old, and all he's doing, he's like, I'm not making an impact on the world, I'm just quietly trying to survive it and like outlast it. Is more the vibe of him.
Right.
It's like, it's important to know, if we come up with a character, I think it's important to be able to scale what level they'd be at when they join the game.
Yeah, and honestly, so that's an interesting idea for a character, and that brings up an interesting point, because here's the thing, I don't think a lot of the issues that are caused by character concepts kind of getting in the way of the story are because people are bad at coming up with interesting character ideas. They're bad at either one, creating a character concept that matches the pace and or like the realm that the campaign takes in, like level 1 to 10, whatever. But secondary to that, there's a lot of concepts that people pick that they aren't inherent, they're bad at. And one of the things that really comes across, and this is kind of a system thing but kind of a player thing as well, is the depowered deity kind of characters. Like, not amnesiac characters, but the character who was really, really strong at one point and then got nerfed back down to level 1, you know, very Kingdom Hearts style. And what the problem with these type of characters is, one, the game is not designed for a character to be low level but have a high level of experience. You know, like, these characters should know a lot. They should have a lot of usable experience, and these games are not great at representing that, especially like D&D, because D&D, it's like your proficiency modifiers are already really bad, and so it's just like, yeah, here's my really old character, they should know this thing, but no, I got, you know, I have a +5 on this roll and I rolled a 2, you know, and it's like, it just doesn't work. And the second part of it as well is, if you want to do it correctly, if you want to have a character who's like depowered, was really strong, has lived a very long time, but now they're like weak for whatever reason, you have to have either access to materials or extensive chats with your GM to know as much about the setting as possible so that you can work that into your character. And so your character, without prompting from the DM, without the GM telling you what your character knows, can tell the other party members things, because that's where those characters in stories shine, right? Is they have a wealth of experience, and even though their body's not as strong, their power is not as capable, they know a lot of things, and that's what makes them interesting, and that's what makes them fascinating. And players don't put in the footwork necessary to make those character concepts work, and so they always feel jank. And that's just, and I'm not blaming anyone necessarily. It's a really cool story idea, and I myself wouldn't want to like need to read a whole book or several books in order to play my character just so they have the knowledge of the setting, you know. And it's just one of those things where it's like, it's a character concept, it's a good character idea, but really, really hard to put into practice.
It's like, I enjoy seeing Booter's take on that vibe in our game. Like, because it is a tough one. It is a tough like archetype to play. To play. I mean, it is essentially oh man, my RPG character made it over to the sequel, and so they're lower level again. Like, I enjoy how it's flowed so far in our anima game. And also it's because I think Booter's doing a fun job at making a character that isn't a joke character, which is also very fun.
Yeah.
But like there are little things you can do, and I think Booter is getting good at it. My favorite are the little isms of like, oh, this character's old. Like the word choice I notice is very like specific that he's picking.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think those are a really good method of doing it. Also, I think it helps that Zerkanon as a character isn't trying to be like, I'm the strongest, coolest, smartest guy here. It's just a genuinely nice guy in kind of a shittier situation. Immediately, I think makes that archetype a bit more interesting. Because I'll be so honest. Whenever I think of the I'm this character that used to be powerful, it's just okay. So you want to find a way to become super powerful at level 1. Like that's what you're asking for, essentially.
Yeah.
You're trying to cheat the level system by way of like role play and being like, hey GM, I'll engage with like your world lore. And it doesn't feel like Zerkanon's trying to do that.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, and I'm blunt with all of you when it comes to your characters. I'm not afraid to point out flaws I see and everything like that. When it comes to Zerkanon, like, I think Zerkanon's good. I think personality-wise, Zerkanon is good, and Booter has gone a long way from Sprite in his character concepts, and he's doing a really good job. The problem with Zerkanon and this concept in general is Zerkanon does not come across and does not feel like to anyone in the setting a really old character. He seems reserved, he seems kind, congenial, but he doesn't actually come across, he doesn't emanate any kind of sense of age. And it's something where in the moments where his character would shine, like for instance, him teaching Alphonse about the various Elven language, for instance, he isn't the one actually getting to teach anyone and representing that through character because he doesn't know that stuff. I, the GM, do. And so I play his character in those moments, teaching those things. And so in a way, he isn't getting the full benefit for his character because of lack of knowledge.
Yeah, the parts where it's like, especially if it's homebrewed anima lore, like that part I also see has the issue of like some settings don't let you do that research and pre-reading unless you're like establishing everything with the GM like right beforehand.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I don't think his character is bad. Don't get me wrong. I don't think his character is bad. The problem is that for the story he would be wanting to tell, the strength of an old character is their knowledge and experience. And he can't represent that. And so most of what Zerkanon represents in the story, at least under Booter's power, is he's a really nice guy. He seems he's like, in a way, without projecting the sense of being a grandpa, he's like your favorite grandpa,
Yeah.
And part of that is not even character concept. Part of that is just comfort with more active role playing and just experience role playing in general. And that stuff I can hand wave away. Like, it's really hard to act, and it's not something you should expect from your players that they are good at acting, right? But there's the other parts of it where it's just like the story you want to tell, the character you want to make and play and everything like that. It's unfortunate that the moments that your character really gets to shine as far as their concept is mostly done by the GM rather than yourself.
Yeah, Yeah, that is like an unfortunate part of it. It's just another like element of character concepts where if you have like a really cool character concept, then also just make sure to put in the fact that like at some point you're not going to portray it as good as you might want, just of like lack of experience or even campaign factors of like it might not go exactly the way you're picturing. And then the issue is you should make sure your character's open enough that like, okay, did I immediately hit this concept I made when like before the game started? Like, no. But is there a way to pivot this in a way that I think still carries over the character and like what story I want to tell with it? Because a lot of times there is. It's just dependent on how much you can make work in the moment.
Yeah, and some of this as well is just levels of comfort. Because the thing is, right, Booter could just make up events he has lived through in the past, as long as like they're not very impactful. He could do whatever. I wouldn't care, you know. He could talk about how he saved a whole village from beasts back in the day, you know, one that after a few more decades eventually was destroyed and there was nothing he could do. And like it's like, yeah, as long as you're not trying to impact the world lore directly, and even to some degree we could work on ways that you guys could, right? uh but he could make up things. But players in general are very unconfident when it comes to like directly telling a world story without the GM like intervening.
You know, it's funny, because I've straight up played that. I've done that, where it was my long running character in Q's game, my tiefling bard Eric Faulkner, where specifically tied into the game, which is funny because it was determined and built to be a very short character, but quarantine hit and I got fired from my job because they fired everyone on like standby. So I played it for a lot longer, but a bit I had with it was this character has a curse of like luck is weird around them. And so I basically with Q, it was okay, so I can just make up things he did in this 3-year period. And the express idea is like this character has done so much that like it would be, oh, they're like really old. No, he just has this curse that makes him live like a lot more events in a short span of time. And I just gave Q a bunch of prompts, or like in session I would make up some bullshit. And there's a level you have to do of it can't be anything too crazy. I also never did it of like, oh, I'm benefiting from the situation because of this. And like instead I had little moments where like I made up a bit of, oh yeah, my character was arrested in this country because they assumed he was taking part in espionage. He also like broke out of a maximum security prison with a guy accused of being a war criminal. And I just made that up. And then eventually, much later, we met the war criminal. He was a nice guy. I stuck up for him. And then and then the idea that I was a fugitive from this country actually had game implications. Had another bit in here that like, oh yeah, I had just a random bit where I just offhandedly mentioned I was petrified for half a year by a basilisk. So because I made some joke that I was very accustomed to being petrified. Like little elements like that. You can create. I have a whole page of like page or two of backstory notes that are just the stories I made up. And then later on, we got to add extra details to it. But like, those are all elements I think you can play into. It's if you're good at that, if you're good at on the fly, just running a bit essentially. It needs to be something that's very like. It's not going to have wide implications unless the GM wants it. And Q is the type where if you give him an inch, he'll like, all right, let me expand on this like a fuck ton.
Yeah, it has to be something innocuous. But once you like get it, right? Like, and to be fair, sometimes, because when I play, typically, I try to do that the best I can. But sometimes it's just like, sometimes a GM can't predict like what you try to add, and so you do something that like system wise. I remember I was playing a warlock and I mentioned like another realm or something like that. Like he connected to it or whatever. And Q was like, oh, people in this world don't really know about that. I was just like, well, I don't know what this the point of this arcane skill is then, you know, because it's just like, what can I talk about? What can I talk about? And you know, it's just like, talk to him a bit beforehand. I always try to get like a sense, and I always want to get like general information, and I always say, hey, here's my idea for my character, you know. And so it's like, I didn't know, and then I stumble over a point that he just didn't make mention of, and it's like, okay, that's awkward, you know. So it's really hard because, especially when you're dealing with homebrew, you don't know what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and that's something you just gotta communicate. But sometimes GMs just like, they don't think about it. They're like, oh yeah, I can work with whatever you throw at me, and then you throw something at them and they're like, okay, 1 second, let's pull back a little bit here. And you know, sometimes it's like in anima, I'm currently developed like a more in-depth lore way of how ki generally works. So even though ki is generally a character thing, and some characters can start with more or less like martial knowledge, like the players just don't know about all my ki stuff yet, and so that's hard. It's hard to properly convey. And for me, I love the act of exploration, so I love giving you guys things you can actively explore. But that does remove some proficiency that your characters can have in those fields. So it can be hard, but
yeah, I think it always depends on like the vibe of it, because at least for me, I know that my random bullshit I developed for Q was I think what it was is I made up like a big old handful. I sent him all the prompts, and I'm like, here you go. These are all like the little things I have. And the bit also was with Eric is that his character was more comedic. It's that like comedic tragedy vibe. And so Q realized and picked up on the fact that, like, okay, essentially all these prompts are doing is building on a world, like a country or an area or a city that I haven't written yet. It's like, cool, now I can just say that Eric was here, and like I can add these extra details. Like it's always the thing, because like there are elements where you try to introduce it, and then the GM has to be like, it's not exactly how this works here, to go against this thing, which can happen. Because like I have my own image of what ki is in anima to me, because I really like the idea of ki is something that is inherently like kind of sourced by your imagination, in the way of it is your body able to do things it shouldn't because you as a person are able to like mentally find a way to do it, and you can make it like that broad enough of definition that it works, but also like the fun I'm getting out of this game is you have a very specific idea of where it's going, very cultivation-y, and I'm playing a character that's not cultivation-y in the fucking slightest. And so the joke I made was how this man brute forced his way into discovering chakra existed. Because I think that's interesting, of a character's like, I wasn't taught this shit, I am just smart. Like, I have a direct, like, I will go step by step by step by step, and figure out every single way I can do this, and I'll figure it out on my own. Because that's fun. I think it's fun to play against the type in that way. And if I eventually read Cradle, which I plan to, I think it'd be funny to just be like, man, this fucking scientist was going through all this spiritual shit, and he's just kind of figuring it out like a math problem.
Yeah, well, you know, that's kind of one of the interesting things about those kind of stories, is sometimes a very smart person can just figure it out as long as they have the opportunity to actually test it. That's usually the hard part, is testing their theories, because, you know, it's like you can't test with magic currently. You just can't perceive it. So you have no way of directly interacting with it.
Yeah.
Which could change, you know. And I think it's good. Like, I think it's especially because I'm not super inflexible about it. I have particular ways, but if I can guide you in the right direction, you'll naturally come to the conclusions that fit for the setting and how they work in general, you know.
Yeah.
And a part of that is just because Anima is just a very weird system where it states specifically in some sections how key works, and then you get the key technique part of the Dominus book. And then characters are doing just insane shit, like using nanites and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so key isn't this. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like part of the cosmos tree breaks a little bit of like my idea of key, because my idea of key is that it's something that's very tied into you. Like it is there are things key I don't think should be able to do, because like I don't think key should be able to do a lot of the crazy effects that magic can do. Like summoning is fair enough, but I think creating something from nothing is a bit weird when it comes to key, because it's your energy. Manipulating your own energy is different.
Yeah.
And there's those like specific lines, and then like there's some overlap with psychic. Like I don't think key should be able to do telekinesis or telepathy or things like that. That's not how key operates. But then I have this key tree that says like, oh yeah, you rip open a hole in like a portal to space.
Yeah.
It's like, fucking okay, how? How'd you do that? And I built a character that has an answer for the how. Largely because like, yeah, it's a character who has like this really weird mental and spiritual link to like the concept of space. Like that is a thing that is in their head. They've given that like eldritch insight to something, and now it feels like it's a part of their body. That's why I've been like focused on that idea, because it's an answer for the incongruity in my head of how the fuck does a key guy open a portal and shoot meteors at you?
Yeah, and to be fair, like I've taken your character concepts into consideration for how I present things to you and how we work with it and how you can explore it, you know. And not necessarily talking about Dr. Hawthorne, but it's a good example. Sometimes as well, and this is kind of where character concepts kind of get back in the way. A character can think or does a thing in a very specific way that may contradict how it should work in the world setting or for a homebrew setting, or just their approach is not necessarily like the most optimal, but that's how you built your character design around. And what happens is characters can kind of brute force a concept into how their thing works. A really good example is like sorcerers in a lot of games, because they don't learn magic in the normal sense. They're born just better. Magic blood.
They just have like that natural affinity, and they just naturally get stronger.
But in games like Pathfinder, for instance, you still technically need to do incantations and gesticulate to use your spells, even though by the lore you're magic and you should just be able to do magic, you know, like you shouldn't have to go through a whole rigmarole of things. So a lot of times what happens is players are just like, oh, and they describe how they do a thing, and it's like, okay, I understand that, like, and this is where the rules are getting kind of more in the way of it, but you know, it's like, I understand you're like, I'm just powerful, I can just throw a fireball because I want to, but you do need to actually like incantate, gesticulate before you do so, and because that's like mechanically it's a part of the game. And also what can happen a lot of the time is players, when there is a system, like Anima's a really good system for this, where you can explore and kind of like, you can kind of do whatever you want with the various magic-y systems. So the GM can set up all kinds of interesting ways to explore it. The player's like, well, this is how I think it works. And they become really inflexible and unable to change, like when they're given new like tips or prompts or whatever on actually like changing their perspective. It's because they have an idea for what they want to do or would like to do, but the what they're running into doesn't mesh with that completely, you know? And it's one of those things that is hard because it's kind of a game of imagination, and you want players to have some level of agency over how they do things or why they do things. And there can be a lot of explanations for how and why they do things, but sometimes the system gets in the way, sometimes the world lore gets in the way, and it's hard to keep it world consistent unless the magic itself has a lot of defined rules. Because, like, for people who've read Cosmere and who've read, like, the Stormlight Archives, for instance, I feel like if knowledgeable players go into the Cosmere RPG and play Stormlight Archives, they're not going to make these inconsistencies because they understand how it works and how it should work. And they can play around with that. They can mess around with what they know, you know, like Fabrial Sciences. I love Fabrial Sciences. But most TTRPGs don't have the same kind of rule sets that, like, Cosmere has.
Yeah, it's like the step that you make and should make in those instances, because there's that element of inflexibility of, like, well, this is the character concept I have, so this is the way I want it to work. When, like, I think it's sad when it happens, because the significantly more interesting answer is, your character believes that's the way it works. So how do they adapt when they find out that that's not exactly right? Because, like, that's a big element purposefully I'm playing into with Dr. Hawthorne of, he had, for the longest time before all this shit happened to him, like, a very strict view on how the world worked. I don't think he was full, like, atheist in there, but he definitely was not spiritual. He was a person that's like, I prefer having very static answers for things and having something be like, oh, you know, God did this or magic did this. He naturally doesn't like that as an answer. He wants to dig deeper. It's why he's a scientist. And now he's engaging in very spiritual things and having to come to terms with the idea that sometimes the answer is just weird. The answer isn't exactly as logical as you'd want it to be. He had an idea of what Ki was very initially of just, okay, I guess it's just life energy. And that's going to change more and more and more. He has a immediate distaste of, like, some magic elements because he doesn't like the idea that it's, oh yeah, you just imagine it and it's real now. And there's a lot more that goes into it. He's not fully able to appreciate because he's not a mage and can't do it himself. But, like, the more fun answer is, like, okay, how does your character adapt this new information into their worldview? Like, if they believe something works a very specific way, and then they get new information, do they change their mind? I mean, it'd be funny to have some of these elements for fucking Arthur, because Arthur as a Ki user was very much built on that, like, he's an idiot savant. He's just really good at fighting, and he's really good at Ki. And he can explain Ki really well. But there are a lot of elements of Arthur that, through, like, outside events, he doesn't operate as a fully normal Ki user, because he has a very specific, weird methodology of doing things. There's just a method in a way that you should have your characters open enough that if new information comes out and expands on your character, instead of rejecting it as a player, because you're like, oh, this doesn't go exactly against it, I don't know, play into the fact of, like, does your character have this cognitive dissonance? Like, they have this new information, how do you adapt it into your belief of something? How do you, like, maybe rejecting it is part of the character, but, like, there is elements of, like, damn, that's just true, though. How much can you deny this? So yeah, it makes me sad when that happens, because I think that there's a more interesting idea you could play that's, like, right adjacent to that. Of the idea of learning how to do this is more fun. I think learning Ki as Dr. Hawthorne would be more boring if he was like, can't measure it, it's not real. Or, like, can't measure it, I deny this. Like, I don't agree that this is how it works. I have my really specific and no evidence-based way of believing it works this way. I think it'd be a very boring character and a very boring journey for him.
Right, yeah. And, again, it's one of those things where, like, I think the answer is also the thing that just the best answer is also like not a real answer because it just won't be how people want to interact with TTRPGs. But I feel like the best method of character creation, you know, at least for early level, is kind of more like setting up a roguelite run, right? Like you set up the things you start with and you go and grow from there based on your experiences. So, you know, you don't prep a build ahead of time. You don't try to focus your character in a specific direction. You just kind of come and use what you kind of like experience through the story as a way of expanding your character.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I just don't think that works most of the time because people want to tell a specific story, you know, and that's the whole point of TTRPGs. And not only that, but it can kind of create a level of disconnect because let's be real, unless your run is going really good in a roguelike game, you're not going to get connected to it.
Yeah, there are runs of like fucking eugenics I've done where I'm like, I don't give a shit if these cats live. This run is so annoying, and like little things adding up.
Yeah.
Like it can happen, and there's like a happy balance you make where I think an answer is like you can have a very strong character concept. I show up to my games with like a strong idea of who this character is, and having a level of adaptability I think is super important because your character is not going to be the same like 3-5 sessions in. You're going to realize in practice how this character operates, how they talk, how they communicate with others. Like it's not going to be the same as like your first session or the idea you have in your head, and being open to that I think is important. There's ways where it would be annoying because like if for example like all of Dr. Hawthorne's stuff turned out to be like, I don't know, something completely off base from like what I'm trying to get into, which is cosmic horror and like very Lovecraftian type character. If it just suddenly pivoted to like something really weird and like against that type, that's fair to be annoyed about and not adapt. If the cosmic horror you think you have an answer for turns out you actually like have this like misunderstanding or it's this different information, that's easier to adapt for and it's a lot better. Adapting to like minor things altering that don't completely shake up and change your shit, it's totally fair, totally fine. It's like, but most of the time your GM isn't going to do that. They're not going to have like, oh yeah, by the way, I know your character is like trying to be a martial fighter. Here is a bunch of wizard stuff because I think you should be a wizard.
Right.
That'd be different.
Yeah. I mean, like, a TTRPG is not a roguelite, obviously. Hopefully, anyway. Hopefully your GM is planning at least some parts of it and isn't just randomly generating everything. But, it's just one of those things where, and Zedrinbot, yeah, you're right. Sometimes a game has a really cool mechanic you want to interact with, but you can't do that at level 1. And so you want to build towards it.
There's honestly, like, I think there's a lot of fun in the idea of a character who's like, I'm level 1, maybe here, like, just off top of my head, I come from a long line of like specific fighters. I come from this line of like Monster Hunter, like very Castlevania, and like a concept you have. You're like, I am from this family. We all use this advanced weaponry, and because of that, I think it's totally fair if the GM is like, yeah, sure. Here is actually like we can have you start off like, maybe the players get some equal thing to make it not just completely unfair. We can start you off with like a shiny fun toy. But it's not going to be as good because you're not cool yet. You're working up towards this thing, and essentially you have this nice goal on your character sheet that you're working towards until, like, I can finally use the shiny toy. Like, there are ways I think you can build into your character of, this is a person trying to get to this state. And, like, that's fun. I think it's very fun. The times where it would be a little weird is if you're, playing a character and it's really clear that, like, man, because we're starting at level 1, I want to do this thing. Let me make this character that's like a major badass, like major all this, did all this stuff way too early. And the climb to get their state, to get their shiny toys and play the build feels a little like weird. When, like, if your character concept is built into the level you're starting at, I think you can have that same operation. And there is just fun, I think, in like the GM having that choice they can give a player of let me dangle the carrot over you real quick. I know you want to go vaguely in this direction, but what if I gave you a harder target and see if you're interested in that? You can't use this right now, but in a level or two, like, ooh, maybe. Like, that's fun.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's a lot of interesting choices. The thing I think that would work the best, that's not the roguelike start, but something similar. Though, I'll also say somewhat more difficult to achieve is make a character who personality, hobby, whatever wise is prone to organically growing in the way you want them to grow. You know, it's like setting up, it's like when you plant plants and you set up the various posts or poles for the bean sprouts to grow up on or whatever. It's something where if you make a character who's already prone to go in the direction that you want to go, it will feel more organic than a character concept that's like, you know, what's a good example? Like, I'm playing a rogue and my goal is to become the Phantom Thief, you know? And so we start playing the game and my character is just like, man, I really like those shiny objects. I think I'm going to plan a heist. That just feels forced, and if it's not along the idea of the story, it can get in the way. But instead, you can make a character who is just like, they like to be showy, and they're really good at picking people's pockets. So one of their favorite things to do is just go up to their friends and be like, hey, got your wallet. Bet you didn't even notice I grabbed that from you. And you do stuff like that where your character isn't necessarily like impeding, harmful. You like the showiness of like your sleight of hand. And that's something that can then organically grow to become the Master Thief eventually. But in the beginning, it's very small scale because you're not trying to become the Master Thief right away. You're just someone who enjoys the game of like pickpocketing or using their sleight of hand, or they even just like showboating. You know, they go into the bandit camp and they're in disguise, and then they just hop up on a barrel and be like, haha, the police are here, and they take off their disguise, and then they start off the combat in the middle of all the enemies, you know, but they love it for the thrill. It's stuff like that where that kind of character will then just naturally grow into your concept. But it's hard to do because it requires some foresight, and it also just requires a level of foundation building that, if you're not an experienced storyteller, can be really hard to conceptualize.
It is a tough thing. It's a tough beat to make a character a lot of the times. Make a character that you think is going to be really interesting and like is going to roll into the party. A lot of it does come down to you can have a really cool concept, but then just the way it comes up in the game might not be as good as you want. Maybe the campaign just isn't as suited for it. Like, there's just a level of experience and skill to knowing when to do what. Because, like, you can have a character that is very, very, like, very, very built for something specific. I have a character concept that is like, oh man, I'm gonna be the best survivalist. Like, every forest, that is my shit. I'm going to grow and train and become the best at this. Oh, by the way, most of the campaign takes place in a desert.
Yeah.
Like, that's a character you don't bring there. I'll be so for real. I also think, for an example, it can sometimes be out of your control, which is why adaptability is really important. Because I don't think, just off rip, Sebastian would be inherently as interesting of a character if we didn't have the Jock Squad in that campaign.
Yeah.
Like, the Jock Squad really built around these characters so strongly, because it was just a bunch of characters in different avenues believing about, like, I want to become the strongest person I can. And so we had a bunch of just fight happy people who were like, yeah, we'll spar, yeah, we'll fight, and there's immediate camaraderie there. And so where all four of them by the end of the game were like the best bros. Like, that's an element that can just come up because of just party dynamics. Can make a big impact on how the character actually goes. It's fun. It's fun, and like having the little elements you build into it. Because I can't say I expected exactly how like Dr. Hawthorne was going to interact with the entire party. Because I built a guy who's like inherently got an ego to him. He's a little bit of narcissistic tendencies of like, he thinks of himself first and foremost. He is more willing to do nice things for people if he believes it benefits him. I've just made it so there's a wide benefit for him to help everybody. And in time, he's gonna like much more like and appreciate the people around him. Like, he at least appreciates Thaddeus a lot, because it keeps him alive, and like also finds that Thaddeus is just a genuinely good person. He's like, he's trying his best. I think with Juniper, it's very much of he already is like, I do feel bad for dragging this person around. I feel bad about the idea of like me possibly getting them killed, but damn, do they help me out with key stuff a lot. And it's like becoming, all right, I guess I can call this person my friend. There's an element of that adaptability. You're not going to know how everything's going to go in your party. So keeping everything open to that extent is important. But then there's a line where if your character concept is, I'll figure it out. I don't have a character idea or character concept. I'm a fighter. Let me figure it out in the moment. Unless you're very good at improv, I don't know how great it's going to be.
Well, yeah, because I think, like, again, a concept is necessary. I said this at the beginning. Concepts are necessary. You need to have a general idea for how you want your character to, like, play and develop and all that kind of stuff. It's just, it's very nuanced. There's a lot of do's and don'ts, and you can break the rules when you know the rules kind of stuff that makes it where giving any concise advice can be difficult, because you don't want to give people the idea that they can't break the rules, but at the same time you want them to like knowingly break the rules rather than like thinking they know how to break the rules when they don't. And a lot of this also just boils down to, and like I understand with a lot of the topics I talk about is more advanced, but that's just what I like talking about, right? Why have a tabletop channel if I don't talk about the things I like? And I really like tabletop and I'm very into it, so I want to talk about the difficult, harder things, because what I want is to have an insane experience you can only have in tabletop. And when it comes to character concept stuff, a lot of this is just advanced, you know? I'm not saying that a game shouldn't just allow you to be the wizard and that's like your only focus, is I'm just going to be a wizard. I'm going to do my best to try to be a wizard. It's more of, if you want to have the best role-playing experiences, if you want to be able to tell the really gripping stories and have a session legitimately surprise you in the best way, then it requires a level of trying. You know, you have to try to get better at tabletop. A good tabletop experience is not a given and is something you must work for. And that's kind of talking about last week when we were talking about just a lot of general TTRPG design nowadays leaning much more beginner friendly, easier kind of stuff, is you can't have really good tabletop stuff unless you're being challenged by the system or by your friends to tell better stories. Because at the end of the day, board game or TTRPGs are not board games. You're not just there to play the game and that's it. You're there to tell a story, and you're there to improv storytell. That's what it is. And so it's a game that becomes more fun the better you get at setting your character concepts up, so that from the get-go, you are playing your character. You're not waiting to play your character. You're not waiting for your concept to come up. You are, from the get-go, playing your character, and as the story progresses, you're growing in ways, probably, hopefully, that you're not expecting. So by the end of it, your character is unique. Because here's the funny thing about this whole idea of the character concept that makes me laugh. Do you think a character should be as good when you first conceive it as after you've played that character for 2 years?
Like, no, the character should be better after you've played it for a long period of time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the thing of like people who make end game ideas for their characters or really build in certain kind of ways. Your concept should not be your end goal because it would be pointless to even participate in TTRPGs if you can just make up a character and be happy with it. It's about the experience. It's about letting your character grow into whatever you want them to grow into. Like, I'm not saying going towards a build is bad. I'm saying if you're going towards a build, you need to make a character who will naturally lean into that build, and maybe even playing in a campaign that will allow you to lean into that build, you know? And what your character has and what they're capable of should not be the part you're excited about, but why they have those things, how they got those things. And that's something you can only do through experience. So it's one of those things where it's hard. It's difficult. It's something that everyone messes up. I've done it plenty of times. Sometimes your character concept can even just be messed up by other party members. You know, maybe you're taking the game, you're sweating a little bit too much for the rest of the party. That just happens, you know. Sometimes you wanted to do a certain thing. Maybe you want to play the stoic badass, but no one wants to be the in for your character. So most of the time your character just sits around and does nothing because no one is trying to like bring you into the story. So, you know, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of character ideas that are just sometimes out of your power, and you have to rely on the GM or your friends or whatever to make it happen. But the number one thing that I'd recommend and my advice would be make a character who becomes your concept. Don't try to play your character to build into your concept, you know. What personality, what quirks, what kind of habits makes a character grow into the build you want to grow them into? That's my recommendation.
I think it's more interesting that way. It's why like an approach I have in my game, like how I operate, is very much I have the concept for the character, and the concept is I'm trying to build a human being that could believably exist in the world we're in. Like that is the hope and the want that I have. And so then like there's the questions that arise that I come from it, and I genuinely think they are good questions to ask in like a general sense. Asking like, why is your character doing this? Because to be honest, how most people live their lives is, unless you're a specific type of person, people usually take a path of like the least resistance. Not even in the like, all people do is they just want to sit home and couch potato and do nothing. More like, why is there a reason right now that you, like watching this VOD or whatever, are not going out and like solo hiking across the country you've never been in before? Like, why aren't you going out and like, I don't know, joining the military and going to an active war zone? Because a lot of those times, they're fucking death sentences. Like, you are going to die if you do that. It's incredibly stupid that you should do that. And so why is your character doing it? I think is an important question to ask. Instead of settling down and having a normal-ass life, I don't know, as a baker or a farmer in some peasant town. That's a question to ask and like figure out, because that usually implies that there's a specific reason why the idea of like comfort and like security and happiness in like a small local area is not appealing to your character. And there's an interesting answer there. And then having that openness, so your character is not like, oh, I'm going down to this exact build path. Having yourself be open to be like, oh, in this campaign, like, man, we keep encountering this type of thing. Oh, I could, pivot, like maybe pick up this ability that actually be super useful. And that immediately sounds like your character's learning from the situations they're in. Maybe you pick up some better upgrades and realize, oh, the build that I wanted, I can actually do this and get what I wanted, maybe even a little better. Because the GM is like, just happened to give me a magic item that I think is cool. Like, have that openness of adaptability as a person would be living through these events. And, like, it makes more sense, because there is an element of gamification that, like, I think sometimes you have to accept. Because, like,
yeah,
it's like leveling up. It's just, sadly, how the games are situated is sometimes your character is just hanging out one moment, and then because the session ended, boom, they're stronger. And, like, there's only so many ways you can, like, logic it out and, like, have that, oh, I have this unjustifiable reason for why I leveled up in power, and I now have, like, 10 more hit points or whatever. Like, a lot of times, there's not going to be a great answer for it. It's a game. And then, so there's going to be game elements that are going to be there. And you just got to have that openness to flow with it. Because sometimes the game is just going to be a game, and being able to adapt with it on the fly is going to make it just a stronger experience for you.
Yeah. And that's the thing as well, is not every TTRPG plays the same.
Yeah.
So the approaches for how you do any, like, character concepts and everything changes as well. And some games, there's growth is kind of more of a concept than it is an actual, like, practical thing. I know in, like, Monster of the Week, your characters do get stronger, relatively speaking. You can boost your stats through some of those checkboxes, but there's a lot of things where just your character gets more stuff they can do. And so a lot of it can just be how you tell the story, and the stats come afterwards, and that's fine too. But even in those games, you're going to likely have a character concept of what you would like your character to be capable of or represent. And so having a lot of these elements, even if the game has no rules and everything is just what you choose to do in the moment or whatever, your story will make more sense if your character grew into their capabilities rather than just spontaneously having them.
Yeah, like, I mean, Monster of the Week specifically, I had a moment where I had the choice, but I was genuinely considering of, like, what avenue do I take this character, because I built him as just, like, he is an FBI agent that is, like, he is Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks if he was just more openly, like, unhinged and, like, way more, I'm going to die in the pursuit of this, like, this thing that I'm going to get, and I'm fine with that. I'm gonna live, like, a horrible life because I'm giving up everything in accordance to what I want and my goal. And as the game went on, I had the option of, like, there were two paths I could go on to send this character from. I think it was the operator or whatever, which is I'm part of an agency. So my character was just like an FBI agent who went through training. And the two options was, like, I could pick the monstrous and become, like, this character is becoming a monster to hunt the monsters. Or he's the professional, and, like, now he is kitted to specifically deal with monsters. And, like, he's very good at it. And it was fun. And I also took that way of, you gotta come up with those concepts, because I did not come up with the idea, like, initially to have this character. At first it was like, he's gonna be slinging guns, a shotgun, maybe an assault rifle later, a pistol. And then later I realized, I guess I'm just gonna make Leon Kennedy from Resident Evil 4. And I got myself, like, he became a melee fighter. He would do, like, gun fu. He would do the, like, I shoot you in the face, and then I do a roundhouse kick to your head, like in Resident Evil. And I did extra holy damage because of that. And there's those elements of keeping if this character was way less closed off, then, like, no, I'm an FBI agent. That's all he is. It's like, then, yeah, I would have, like, been stuck, like, way before. And there would be less for him to flow into. Which is, granted, a flaw of Monster of the Week. Just, it is a game that the only way of further progression is to make a new character or change up your kit like way too much,
Yeah.
which is annoying. Like I personally think it is a game that would benefit from having like, I don't know, ascended versions of like certain playbooks, because I don't like how rule light games all the time are like, well, wait, what? You want to like not play a character for a long period of time? Like, yeah, I like role playing a character. It feels like your system should be suited for that, but for some reason it isn't.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Monster of the Week is kind of designed to be like that weekly cartoon, you know, Monster of the Week style story. So like, it's not inherently, it's not the campaign. It's the session to session that's supposed to be big, but you know, it just means we're just not those kind of players at the end of the day.
It is a frustration for like, there are a lot of games that are rules light that we've encountered where that is an issue, where they like fucking Blades in the Dark is similar. I think it's just the Powered by the Apocalypse thing, to be honest. But like, there's just those games where it's suited for those kind of like weekly things. Like, oh, it is just a kind of a funny old romp. And like, yeah, I like the idea of the funny old romp, but like, I want that for maybe a period of time. Like, I would like it if I could do a Monster of the Week game with further progression, because like, it goes against me. Even like, I can fuck with rules light. I can fuck with the games if the group is good enough, if the story is going to be good enough. I can put up with some weaker stuff, because then I'm just having fun with my friends. The part where I start getting annoyed by Monster of the Week is the fact that it feels like the game is pulling hairs for me to play the same character for a long period of time, because I'm not a person who comes up with characters really fast, and I'm never the person who's like, oh man, if this character dies, I have 3 more builds I could run. Like, I'm not that person. I like settling into one person and really digging at their psychology. That is like my biggest issue with Monster of the Week. Like, well, I mean, just Powered by the Apocalypse.
Well, kind of, but it's just a preference thing, you know. Like, it's a thing where it's just like, it's okay to say, I wish Monster of the Week had like an ascended thing or whatever, but the real answer is probably you just need to find a different game, you know, because
that is the real answer.
It does what it was designed to do, which is be, you know, perfect for week to week. Because like,
and I don't like that.
I agree, because my character was the experts. That was the whole idea for the character, and none of the other playbooks matched what I wanted. And so it was just getting frustrating towards the end, because I was just like, I'm gonna run out of options soon, and I'm just kind of being forced to take all the options here on this sheet, you know. And because like, here's the thing, right? Despite what we're talking about, my character Tobias in that story, I think that the story he went through was amazing, really good. I love how in the beginning he was just like he's like a weird like
he basically just hung out on Reddit forums and like picked up and he's like, I'm into magic stuff, like I'm into this, and then it's like more of that, like, you have a passing interest in a thing and are rich, and then it turns to, oh fuck, it's real, I have a real interest now.
Kind of, but it's more like he's kind of just like the perfect person, not like perfect as in he does everything super well and he's super badass, but like he's really smart, he studies all the time, he watches his health, you know, probably to an obsessive level. And he does everything that people should do, but no one really chooses to do. And to watch him over the course of the story slowly get like more affected by the supernatural things, to the point where at the end of the story, he's probably going to be like a coffee drinking insomniac who's way less focused on his own personal health and way more focused on like the supernatural stuff going on. And it was good. I enjoyed it, but like mechanically and gameplay wise, despite the good story we told, we could have told the same good, really good story and have better systems to interact with. you know.
Yeah, I always wonder every once in a while what how differently that game would have gone if I hit the same tone idea, but I mentioned Hunter the Reckoning instead.
Yeah.
Because like I think at least Hunter has more shit for you to do.
Yeah.
Like as your character, it's still like a World of Darkness game, which like love or hate exactly how it is. Like I think it's a step above like mechanically what a rules light game is. Like I'm a big fan of its like wishy-washy stat system, where it is. I like the challenge of coming up with like the melding of stat versus skill and like dice pools.
Yeah.
It has a bit more crunch to it, and then it depends if which edition we pick, because then we could do either do we want to play characters who are becoming more supernatural, or that vibe of these are people, just regular ass people hunting down the monsters in World of Darkness. The idea of like if we played these same characters in a Hunter the Reckoning game, and be like, I'd be curious how Tobias would deal with learning about the clans of Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, it would be
That'd be
interesting. I mean, that's the thing, right? And that's like, again, if you like rules like games, we understand. We're not saying they're bad. It's just, in my opinion, and Alex's too, it's just like, but what if you could just play more game with the story, you know?
Yeah, that's always what I want.
Have more knobs to turn, you know? And it's sad that so much of the industry seems to be orientated towards new player experiences, or people are playing my game for the first time, let me put on the training wheels as best as possible kind of stuff, and not really trusting people to be able to like actually figure the game out or learn. It's like Path of Exile, right? Path of Exile, the first one more especially because there's just a lot more in it, is a game that is not designed for your first time playing through.
No, it's your second character is going to be the better one.
It's not even your second character. I would say it's like your 10th character is when you start really getting into what Path of Exile has to offer, because there's just so much information to digest and so many different things you can interact with. And there's so many ways of like running your character that like changes a lot. But when
funny when
go ahead.
It is funny when the game, like the best advice you can give a new person is, hey, follow a build. Don't think for yourself, follow a build. You're not going to know what this means.
But the thing is, Path of Exile has so much more to do and so much more game than most games out there that it's almost ridiculous. You know, it's silly the state that some games even release in, because they're just so superficial. And I'm saying all games. I'm just saying, and I'm not saying any game that's not Path of Exile. I'm just saying that like there's just a lot of games out there that are like lowest common denominator style games, but it's like that's all there is to the game. You can't invest and play these games more. That's why all these online games die so quickly, because in your first 60 hours of playing the game, you've done everything. There's nothing else to do. And so they leave. You know? And it's like you need stuff, and not even grind goals. Grind goals is not the way to do it. Just do what Path of Exile does. Make a game. You can play it. You can have fun on your first run. It's not the optimal experience, but that's kind of the point. But the more you play Path of Exile, the more you find out that there's things to do, and the more things you do. Every time you do a new run of Path of Exile, you do more than you did last run.
Yeah, you just realize some of the stuff that existed, and like there's a lot of fun in it. Like I have a lot of fun in some very simple, like not anything crazy games, but like there's a lot of times where I want to sink my teeth into something super complicated. Like I mean, a fun example that everyone is doing right now is fucking eugenics. Because, like, the best way to describe it is, like, if you like titles that are those, like, smaller scale tactics games, shit like Into the Breach, I think the Tactics like Final Fantasy titles are similar to. It's essentially the step below like a Fire Emblem battle map deal. But you want a game that's like really tightly designed in that genre. As Mugenics, I'd say if you don't like the genre, you're not gonna fuck with the game that much. But like if you really like the game, you're gonna realize all the shit it's giving you to do. And like that's where the fun comes in. Of just like, okay, I understand how this works. I can do a fuck ton of things in it, and I can play it for a long time. Because apparently it took the creator Edmund, like it took him 200 hours to beat the game.
Yeah, 250 hours.
Yeah, which is insane. Like, and then another example that's gonna come up definitely next month is Crimson Desert, because Crimson Desert seems like a game that is the way it's built is very much on like your investment in what's going on, because like progression in that game apparently works in gear and discovering things to give. Like you discover and mimic powers from other things, you find new weapons, you find new gear. Like there is no leveling system in that game. And in the other way, that the game apparently is going to be able to be as complicated or as simple as you want. You could probably run through it with very simple, I swing a sword, I shoot bow, or you can go grappler build, and like you can do all this insane bullshit in the game. So the depth of the mechanics are going to be the thing that you might fuck with, or it might just be too much information, and so you don't fuck with it. Like that's just a way tabletop games work in some extent too. I at least am happy that we're getting more and more games that are like a little bit more complicated, because like I think we're slowly getting out of the area of every game is a rules light, every game is just D&D, like very slowly, and largely it's because I think there are some games that have come out where people are like, oh thank God there's like more to it. Like I think Cosmere would be better if it was slightly more complicated of a system.
I agree.
But like I think it's a step into like, hey, let's make a D&D thing and like have some more mechanics. Because I like the idea of all the actions you can take in combat. It really is just like, let me find a way to generate advantage as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like I think it'd be a fun push and pull. Like I don't think it hit it, but it could be a fun push and pull of playing with the advantage disadvantage systems. Though I mean I think the game would also be cooler if it had like a dice pool system or something like that. But like I think we're slowly moving away, and it's because a lot of the indie games that are coming out, there are so many games where you learn about and you realize like the creator's like, oh yeah, by the way, this is inspired by 4th edition D&D. Like I've heard that way too many times.
Yeah.
And it's like it's getting to the point where my only exposure to 4th edition was shitting on it. And so I'm like, damn, was 4th edition kind of good? Because every game I really like turns out it was inspired by 4e D&D.
Yeah, and that's because it was the one that they really wanted to like focus on the combat elements of it. I think they just changed too much, and that's what was the problem. It wasn't even like too much in the sense of like the actual gameplay, but they changed like classes. Classes were not quite the same as they were before, and all kinds of other things that just kind of made it feel not like D&D, like a completely different type of game. And I think that's what threw a lot of people off.
Yeah, there's a balance you gotta make of we're making our new thing, we want to add all this stuff. Like you can do that, but if you show up to the table with a game that plays completely differently, like unless the new thing is really good, it's more just gonna piss people off, because like, man, I liked this thing, I wanted to see you do more with this thing, and then you went a completely different direction. And even then, even if it's like phenomenally designed, people are just gonna be like, I just wish I had more of my thing.
Yeah. So, you know, it's one of those things where I'm hoping for more. And actually, before we end stream today, we're kind of getting towards the end. I want to talk about another game that has me intrigued. I don't think I'd like the game itself, but I think it's adding some interesting things, and it kind of leans into this whole concept idea. And that's Legend of the Mist. If you look at any kind of YouTube stuff around tabletop, you probably have seen this a few times in commercials. Legend of the Mist is an interesting game. because it is a tag-based game. So you don't have abilities, or you don't have even necessarily like equipment or anything like that. You have tags. And these tags can be used to add to certain types of checks. And it goes a lot more in depth than that. But more or less, like, a character starts off with like 3 tags. And the tags can be like, the example they give is like my father's sword, you know. So whenever you're fighting someone, you probably are using your father's sword, so you add a +1 to your die roll for that. And then you put in like an experience, like a ranger of the top-notch woods, something like that. And what the game does that's very interesting, that I've been like contemplating implementing something similar with the games I've been designing, is whenever a thing comes up, you look at your character's tags and you apply whatever positive tags you have, but your character can also gain negative tags. So one of the ones they gave an example is like an old injury, where maybe you need to jump up and hit an enemy, you know, because they're very tall or something like that. The GM can say, hey, that triggers your negative tag there. And so you would subtract from your roll, whatever. But I really love the idea of a game that implements very tightly tags or like narrative bits and experiences to the mechanics. Because something I'm trying to do for the 333, the game I've been designing, and conversely, Thaumasite, I've removed skills completely. So now you have skill sets in the game. And skill sets are like athlete, scholar, all this kind of stuff. So whenever you make a check in my game, you pick your most appropriate skill sets, and then you roll a die and you get minimum your skill in that set. So it's a skill floor game rather than skill ceiling game. And then those skill sets might have bonuses that apply to your checks. So what happens is in the 333, now it's no longer, do I have this skill? Do I not have this skill? You ask yourself, okay, this job, like, you need to climb a tree, you know, and you look at your various skill sets. Maybe you don't have athlete, but maybe you have like laborer, you know, you've done a lot of labor work in your life. You're like, well, my character's like relatively physically capable because I lift heavy shit all day. Then the GM determines how much your skill set aligns with the check, and that changes how difficult the check is. And you go from there. But what this game does is now your character has normal, like, reasonable experiences. So it's no longer a question of like, what's your arcane skill? Because in real life, we don't have skills necessarily. You might develop specific skills for using specific things, but if you were like a wood carver, right? Unless you're carving wood specifically, it applies to different types of things you could do in different ways, you know. Maybe you're a wood carver, but you want to try sculpting. Well, you know how to work a material. That's kind of a thing. And so that can be applied in that situation. And the thing is that now, even if your character isn't necessarily good at a particular skill check, it's like unlikely they're going to make it, you have a variety of things from the talents that might apply to the skill in question. Allowing your character to have interesting blends of using your prior experiences when trying to overcome challenges and everything like that. And if your character has a skill set that's like completely aligned with the skill, then you're going to be really good at that thing. And so you're still motivated to develop skill sets for specific types of actions, but now you can use those focuses for your character sometimes for other things. Even if it's more difficult, you can be like, well, you know, you have the student skill set. You're like, I went to gym in school, so we'll see how this climbing the tree thing goes, you know. And you can tie naturally to your skills your relative experience to a thing, and it tells a story rather than just my wizard knows arcane because I'm a wizard. What does arcane represent? I don't know. You know, have I used portals before? I don't know. I have arcane. We'll see if the dice says I've used arcane or not. You know, it's just really hard to apply that in a more broad sense that relates back to your character's experiences.
Yeah. Like, it isn't the thing with when I hear the tag system, where because I at least think like the vibe that Legend of the Mist is making is pretty cool. Like I like the general art on their website. Like I like a lot of that. It's just when I hear the tag system, I'm just like, I want to see how crunchy it gets. Because whenever I see narrative first tabletop game, I'm just like, okay, there's not gonna be a lot of meat on it. There might be some really fun ideas, but like I wish these were on a crunchier game, because like the tag system sounds cool. Like I like that a lot. If it was part of bigger gameplay, probably would be sick.
Well, yeah, and that's why I said before that, like, I don't think I'd like Legend of the Mist, especially because Legend of the Mist, a slower paced Hobbit-esque kind of setting, rather than like anything more high fantasy. But how it works, and there's a demo you can go and play because I have a solo mode and everything like that as well, where you make your character concept and you give yourself some key tags. And I mean, the tags can be like very simple things like your weapon, you know. And what I like about that is you can get around a lot of the weird situations with skill checks that feel very inorganic by just making reasonable, logical conclusions, like how beneficial is my father's sword for this task? You know, how beneficial is my experience as a ranger for this task? And you still have the ability to make a build, because you can align your tags with certain concepts and ideas, where like if you're a fighter, a lot of your tags are going to be about fighting or about war or about being a mercenary and everything like that. And if you're going to be more of, I don't know if there's magic in the system, but I could see magic being implemented in the system, because honestly it's a tag-based system. There's not like there's a lot of crunch for a lot of things.
Yeah.
But you could make a lot of things where like your character is known cultist, you know, could be one of your tags. And so you're familiar with cults, and so anytime cult stuff comes up, you can be like, you know, I was a cultist before, or I'm a cultist now. You know, I know how they work, how they act, what they're doing, all that kind of stuff. And I want to see more games. I would like to see a denser game, admittedly. But I'd like to see more games implement this idea of, rather than having strict skills that players need to invest in, making narrative experiences their skills in a way. So that, because here's the thing, right? In reality, you may have spent your whole life never climbing a tree before, but if you do sports, or if you are physically active in other areas, you could probably climb a tree, you know. Even if it's a little difficult, your innate strength and overall physicality would probably make it work. Maybe your balance from something else you've done helps, or just your general grip strength. And in games like Anima, if you don't have climb, you're fucked. And in games like D&D, you could be really good at climbing and still suck at it if you can't roll above a 10. But
Yeah, there's like elements where I hear that, and it sounds like a really cool thing to implement in something crunchy, like because that makes sense. I think it wouldn't even be that crazy and be a fun sense of progression where I'm a big fan of progression that gives you stuff based off of like what you're doing in game. And so it could be really cool if there was like a variant form of like skill feats in something where you gain tags as you played. You start off with like maybe one, like a couple, and then like as you play, every once in a while you get another that you can create based on the campaign. That'd be a fun experience. And then you can utilize that essentially as like an expertise.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things with Legend in the Mists does, because they have a variety of things. There's a variety of different types of tags, like item tags and injury tags and all this other kind of stuff. And some of them, they have the ability to change, or they can give you additional tags based on it. Like if you have old injury, for instance, if you go through a scenario where that injury gets treated or something is beneficial to you in that regard, you mark off a little box where it says improve, where you could make old injury turn into like, you could remove it from your character. It could get worse if you suffer like other injuries, and it there's I think like a D grade set of boxes for it, or there's like a change where it changes into something else. And it's kind of like the goal system in Cosmere, where a lot of your things are like little cards that over the course of the game, the more they come in handy, they can be improved, they can change, and your character has an evolving story through their cards and through their tags and everything like that, which I think is really cool. I don't really see builds in this kind of game, which is kind of the turnoff for me specifically, but I really like the idea of change over the course of a character's journey, and like growth and even like degeneration. And I really hope that Legend in the Mists makes waves and influences some crunchier games to add more narrative tied elements to character sheets. Because I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna be so for real, as much as I love anima, I hate how granulated the skills are sometimes, where players who are relatively good in one field, like Dr. Hawthorne's really good in science, but he's like really shit in history, you know? And he's like, but he's been a scholar for a long time. He knows a lot of things. Like, even if he doesn't study history directly, he probably has heard and knows more about history than your average person.
Yeah, just being in academia, like, yeah, there's a lot of that element, because I like anima a lot, but I think the skills are like so broad, and to the point where like I think it's fun to have a handful of skills you're picking as like, I will always be good consistently at this, but it's so broad. Like some of these skills would have to transfer, like they have to, like literally, like sure, my character might not have learned how to swim, but as someone who's physically fit, I could probably figure it out. Like, yeah, if I didn't have points in swim, like there's elements like that I think anima suffers from, just having too many skills, when like there could just be some broader categories. Like athletics could count for climb and swim. Like, I'll be so for real.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of personal like life experiences as well involves more than one skill, like skill sets. You know, I went to marine science camp when I was younger, and yeah, I learned about marine science, but I also learned about sailing during that time. And I have a lot of experience on boats, you know, and being on boats in general. Like, sure, I know how to sail a boat, but I also know a lot about animals that are near boats and everything. And I know about regions, local regions, about where we would take our boats. So sailing is something that like I would have that skill, but I'd also have a lot of skills associated with it. And so that's kind of like why I'm changing the 333 from being very skill focused to now skill sets. So now there's certain experiences your character have, and then all it just takes is a reasonable amount of logic in a very small scale. You know, it's either +0 or +3 or -3. Not, well, sorry, it's +0 or +3, where if it's a +0, +0 to the difficulty, right? So the skill you're doing is completely in line. Like, you're a sailor, you have sailing skill set, so sailing a boat is sailing. There you go. But maybe it's knowledge about an island. Well, you're a sailor, so maybe you've heard about this island or anything like that. I would say probably like a +1, maybe a +2, depending on narrative reasons, you know, but +1 to the difficulty. So I can use my sailing for recalling knowledge about an island, just because I've been on boats and it's an island and maybe I've heard about it and everything like that. It's a little bit more difficult, and it would be better if I was like, I had a skill set more about it, like geography or something like that. But it's close enough where it's reasonable. I would still be able to succeed on a check, even if it's to a certain degree. And then how the talents can intermix on your dice checks, because some talents work every time you just make that check for that type of thing. Athletics is a really good one, where you just you increase your results of your checks by +1 whenever you're making athletics. So even if it's something that athletics is kind of not good at, as long as your physicality plays any part in it, you're gonna roll a little bit better just because your physicality is so good, you know. And I feel like more games need to do that, because honestly, narrow skill checks, one, are sometimes too vague to even know what applies to it or allows a character to do a lot of things with just one set of skills or one skill check, and they also just don't tell anything actually about your character. Because I can tell you from playing a lot of Pathfinder, there's a lot of times I had skills that were not relevant to my character's story at all. I just had a skill increase and I didn't know what I wanted to increase, so I just dropped it in.
Yeah, I've had that.
But that's gonna be it for us today. Hopefully not a lot of people will read the title and get upset, but I think character concepts are just difficult. I think there's something that is the hardest part of tabletop, because it can literally get in your way of telling a good story. And if you're just like a board gamer style tabletop player, then it's probably not a big deal to you. But if you're more of a moderate or even more of a narrative, then I feel like character concepts are the biggest like trip that you can come across when it comes to playing a game and making a character. And as long as you aren't like overreaching with your story and just trying to make someone reasonable who can grow into the kind of character you want, I think you'll have a good time. But before we head out, Alex, is there anything you want to leave us off with today?
Yeah, and well, if you're a fan of tabletop game lore, I got that over on my channel. It's Glue Boy. I put out a video recently on Iteration X, and I'm currently chugging away at another video that hopefully will be out before Table Talk next week. That'll be fun. Other than that, I got other big projects I'm working on. I'm gonna be like, intermittently, I have a couple things planned in like the next month and like the month after that. So gonna be chugging away as much as I can before I take some time away from channel stuff.
I still have a baby.
Yeah.
But in some good news, she has now gone to a normal sleeping schedule. So,
oh hell yeah.
Which does consistently seem to be leaving me an hour to 2 hours every day after she goes to bed. So I'm not gonna make any promises on videos, and I know my mother is gonna be up in the area early next month, so that will be the most likely time. But there's still a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I do actually want to make a video on Legend in the Mist, because I do think it's doing some really interesting things. And honestly, where we're currently standing in the TTRPG field, there's a lot of interesting developments coming out. A lot of games are getting like expansion books. I know Straw Steel is, I know Daggerheart is, and I know the general field of tabletop is shifting since last year, because Daggerheart was such a big game and kind of toppled D&D off its pedestal. I don't think it's stronger than D&D yet, but it made D&D not like the only game everyone is talking about.
True.
And there's just a lot of people who are developing TTRPGs that are coming out with stuff in the near future. So I think we got a lot of interesting things to talk about. I just need the time to talk about such things. But that's going to be it for us. Thank you all so much for watching. And I guess have a nice day.
See ya.
Bye.